Kia ora and welcome back to the In Her Words online summit. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Emma Kate Woodham. Emma Kate is a massage therapist and mindfulness coach who offers freedom from tensions in both your body and mind. As well as a qualified massage practitioner, Emma Kate is also trained in positive neuroplasticity training and specialises in trauma-based mindfulness. Emma Kate, welcome.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be here. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks for joining me. So after that brief introduction, I'd love it for you to tell us more about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so it's probably easiest if I start right at the beginning, because that will explain my story and where it has led me to and why I'm so passionate about it. So I was born in 1974, 17th of December, normal, healthy baby, we thought. And on Christmas Eve, I went into heart failure and was rushed to hospital. And that was the beginning of a very long journey. 3 months later, I had my first open heart surgery, and I was given a 1% survival rate. So
Wow.
I grew up through my whole life thinking that I was going to die. As a child, when I was young, I didn't really know. I just couldn't do things that everybody else could do. Then I got really sick about 9, and at 10, I had my second open heart surgery. And during that, it all went horribly wrong, and they had to start all over again. It was really touch and go. And I remember after that a really slow recovery, but going back to the appointments, I guess I was old enough to understand what was going on, and Mum would ask questions, and a lot of it was that they just didn't think. They thought that last surgery might give me a year, maybe 18 months, and then that would be it. There would be nothing more that they could do. So through my whole childhood, there was always that back ahead that I was going to die. It's really hard being a child, with all the things that are going on normally, but I was really behind in school. I was hardly ever at school because I was too sick, so I missed a lot of just that pre-building block, the basics. Mum and Dad sent me to a Steiner school because they thought that I wasn't going to survive, so I may as well just have fun and enjoy my childhood. So all of that happened, and I was always last to be picked in the sports teams, everything, and I always felt left out because I never really managed to form real friendships. You'd start to be included in a group and they'd go for play dates and do things, and then I would disappear for long periods of time, and when they came back, I'd missed out on so much. So I didn't know what anybody was talking about, what anybody was doing. So I really felt like I was an outsider. I didn't have any siblings until I was 10 and 12. I had no cousins, no one my own age. So I was really brought up as this only sick child around my parents and family. So it was quite different. And then my parents at 13 decided to send me to the big local school, and there were thousands. I'd come from a very small class. And so I went to a standard school. I didn't even know what science was, any of those things.
Wow.
So I was really behind, and I was socially behind too. And I felt quite awkward, especially if we had swimming sports. I had all these scars all over my chest and all over my legs, and I just felt like I didn't fit in. And I really stood out. And I think that really impacted my self-worth. I didn't feel like I was worthy. I was constantly being told I was dumb and I was stupid. I was tested for dyslexia, learning issues. They discovered I didn't have any of those, but I had just missed so much school that I was just behind. So I've always been playing catch up, even as an adult. My writing and my grammar and various things, I'm always getting picked up on it. But I missed so much school. It's really interesting. So for a lot of time, there was a lot of shame behind that. And I got really sneaky at trying to find ways of covering that. And knowing that was my weakness, I built other strengths. So it's really interesting. And so that's sort of the short version. And then in my 20s, I decided that I wanted to travel because my mum, God bless her, wrapped me up in cotton wool and sort of my family, and I just wanted to go and explore. So that's what I did. But I also rebelled. I partied far too much, made too many, choices that were not wise. I drank too much. I did all of those things that my friends were able to, but they were able to recover really quickly. I wasn't able to recover, and eventually I made the decision that it was really not worth the cost. So I disappeared and went to Bermuda, and that is where I met my husband. And that was a great fit because he didn't want children. I couldn't have children. But we got married and I had this real longing to have children. It was just inside of me. So we decided to give it a go, and no one knew how that would go. There was no data. I got told that I probably shouldn't. It would put too much pressure on my heart and my child. I probably couldn't carry a baby and it could kill me. So we'll fast forward there. I managed to have 3 children.
Wow.
The births were incredibly difficult. I should have had my own room in the hospital and park there because I spent a huge amount of time. All 3 children were prem because I couldn't hold them in and I was really sick. And then my middle child was born, Rossi, with a heart condition as well. And I had a huge amount of mother guilt over that. What have I done? Because I knew what it meant. I knew what restrictions it would place on him, and my heart broke, really. It was, it's a really hard thing to describe. And that stayed with me for a long time, especially when he was a baby. We put him on the table for his first open heart surgery, and I had to give him a kiss. I was allowed in there, gave him a kiss goodbye, and we didn't know if we'd see him again. The surgery would be successful or if he would wake up. And yeah, I can't really put into words how that felt. But also then there was a real understanding of what my mother had gone through and what I had put her through. So it's really quite a parallel. I'm now a mother of a heart child, can really see where my mother came from. So that's a little bit of that journey.
A fabulous insight into the challenge that you must have had, sort of, right from the day you were born, but then, like you say, the challenges that then repeat out as well with your own children, and looking at that from the other side. I mean, it's clear to me when you tell your story why you ended up doing what you do now. Do you want to kind of tell us a bit more about sort of how all of that you've been through has informed the work that you do now? Because there's such a link there, and sort of, when we talk about people living in their purpose and giving back to the world based on the challenges that they've been through, this, I think, is you're a real life shining example of that.
Yeah, it really started Facebook. One day I answered an ad from a psychologist about to do his thesis on does mindfulness and meditation help with anxiety and trauma, and for some reason I filled out the form. And I went on the pilot and we did this 10-week course, and he couldn't believe why I'd never had counselling and my story. And I was really sick. I'd had 3 children. I had had another heart surgery when my daughter was 10 months old. I was just feeling tired. I had no energy. I was not sleeping well. I was in chronic pain from the surgeries. And suddenly this mindfulness, and I was on lots of medication. So I started doing mindfulness and meditation, and I ended up feeling so much better. I went to my cardiologist and asked if I could come off all my medications. Because I had high blood pressure. He was not impressed, but I said I really want to do this. So we worked out a plan. Fast forward, 5 years later, I have not been on any heart medication. I have not needed any surgery. I had an experimental one in 2010 that was supposed to give me 2 years. So it has given me 10 years already. Wow. And I really put that down to just having that consistent mindfulness meditation practice, which then has led to a whole lifestyle change. Yeah. So that's the first thing. Then I had been reading some books by Rick Hanson, and one of them was on resilience. And that really sparked something in me. I wanted to know how I'd gone through all of these challenges and still had my head above water. I haven't had any depression. I haven't been on any antidepressant meds, which I can understand they have their place, but I've never been in that circumstance. So what makes me different? What gave me the get up and go to move through all that trauma and still live a happy and joyful life? If I could work that out, then perhaps I could help others. And so in one of his talks, he talked about his childhood trauma, and he asked anybody in the audience if they could relate. And I put my hand up and said, I can relate, because this morning I spoke to my mother and she was talking about when she put me in the lift to go and have my first open heart surgery. And then I talked about my son. And that's when the light bulb moment happened, that yes, I had childhood trauma, but yes, I could use this positive neuroplasticity to help and rewire my brain. But actually, I do have a story. I just thought I was me. Who would want to listen to me? What have I got to offer? And that was the beginning of how everything sparked.
Awesome. And what is it? I mean, it must be such, to be able to take that and know that it's worked for you and then be able to help others with it. It must give you so much joy in what you do. What's the best bit about the work that you do now? What do you enjoy most about what you do now?
I think it's letting people know that yes, they can be in pain, yes, they've had trauma, but that is not their defining moment. They don't have to add the suffering to it. And I think that's the key bit. Most of us go down that rabbit hole, and from the pain we add those second darts that become the suffering.
Yeah. Pain is
And
inevitable, suffering is optional, eh?
yeah, and it's just how you view things. And I think really I found my true spark came with my son. He has anxiety, and he has post-traumatic stress and various things, and I couldn't get the help that he needed. So that's partly why I went and trained. But also I'm his mother, and so he didn't want to sit and meditate or anything like that. So I had to get smart. So I looked at what he loved doing, and he loved cooking. And he's a perfectionist, and he's really hard on himself and thinks he's got no self-worth. So we started cooking, and cooking never works out perfectly, does it? There are so many life lessons in cooking. So during that, when he had his moments or his meltdowns, I taught him how to breathe. And then I taught him some grounding exercises. And then slowly that came into the normal everyday life. But not only that, he got his self-worth. He was putting food on the table for the family, and they were loving it. So not only did he come out of his anxiety and build new skills, he also had a sense of worthiness about him that he didn't have before. And so that's another moment of, just you've got to find your passion and your joy, and then the rest will come. And it's so healing.
Yeah, and we don't just get to share it with people, but our families and those we love as well, which is great. Once we have these skills, there must have been a huge amount of challenge and fear, and this is sort of the story that you have. What kind of lessons have come out of that? When you look back now in hindsight from the place you're in now, what would you say have been your biggest learnings through your experiences?
I think self-acceptance and having self-compassion and self-love. And I wish I'd learned that a lot earlier on. But I think that's what has really cemented it for me. And that's some of the lessons I learned working with Rick, was why was I able to cope? And it was that I had self-compassion, and I was grateful, and I could find joy in very little moments, and then use those joy to go back when I had those hard moments. And so even though I've had some really challenging times, and I still will have more challenges, I've got those inner resources, so those bumps aren't so big. Or if they do hit me, they don't hit me for as long. I can go within, and I've really learned to soak in the good and use that. So yeah, that's
It's great. It's great advice. And on that note, what are you grateful for right now? What's good about life?
Good about life is actually, strangely, this blessing of time, the time and the grace that I know we're in COVID, and I want to acknowledge that it has been really hard for lots of people on lots of different levels. I haven't worked as a massage therapist because I can't, but I decided to pivot and turn that around. In the beginning, I was really fearful that I had reached the age of 45 and got through this heart condition, and this stupid virus was going to take me out. How unfair was that? I went down a rabbit hole for about a night, and then I kind of pulled myself back up. And for me, it's just such an experience to sit back, have that inner growth, and work out really how I can serve people more, and what I can change. And I don't want to rush back to what I was doing before. I've really managed, this time has been a real blessing for me to really step into my own practice, deepen my practice, and really find my true purpose and just let that shine. So
Good on you. I've loved hearing people's stories post lockdown about how we have been able to get perspective and use this time for, it's been challenging for some, but regardless of how we've experienced it coming out of the other side, what's going to be different? What does our new normal need to look like? And that's a great example, Emma Kate. So you've got an inspiring story. I think many people listening will think, wow, if you can overcome all what you've overcome and still find the joy in life and be grateful and be strong and show up in the world and live your purpose, then that's inspiring for others. Who is it that you look up to? Who are kind of your inspirations?
my mother and my grandmother. My mother, unfortunately, has just passed away earlier this year of cancer, and I had the great honour and privilege of looking after her. In the beginning, she was really resistant, and I just had to say to her, it was such an honour. She was always beside me in the hospital, holding my hands, always encouraging me when I didn't want to get up and to keep going. And really, she's been such an inspiration on that level. But she was also a physiotherapist, and she taught me to have great empathy for my clients and her clients, and how to treat them in pain and how to honour their stories. So for me, she was just so inspiring on so many levels. And then being with her in her last weeks, she just did it with such grace and dignity. And she was just so loving. She was worried about all of us, not her. She was mothering until the end. And I would just she just inspired me to be like that for my children. So really, it comes back to my mother.
Like you say, big there at the beginning, and then that role reversal at the end. And pretty sure it was probably a privilege for her as well to be able to do that with you in that moment of her life as well. Such an amazing story, Emma Kate. What is it that you kind of, if I was to ask you what your secret to success is, or how you keep kind of your head above water when life gets a bit hard or a bit busy, what would you say is that for you?
I think it's just going back, taking some deep breaths, and knowing that I've had some really tough times in my life, and I've got through that. So I just need to break it down with those baby steps, and just know that I've got my own back, that essentially I'm okay. I can do this. I've got it. And it's just really, I think, it's interesting, that whole word of success, isn't it? To me, my success is that I'm raising 3 beautiful children, and that they're happy, and that hopefully by sharing my message, I can help someone else and lessen their suffering. So to me, that is what success is about.
Lovely. I like that. Small steps and helping others along the way. Beautifully summed up. So Emma Kate, where can people find out more about you, and what have you kind of got coming up that we should know about?
Okay, so the best place is at my website, which is just www.emmacate.co.nz. And I'm in the process, and it's really exciting. I'm putting together a workshop for anxiety and trauma and chronic pain. But I'm looking at it slightly differently. I had a lot of frustration trying to find help for my son, and I might be given 5 or 6 treatments or anything with a psychologist or therapist. That was it. I was left hanging. So were his siblings. So was his dad. So I'm in the process of building a workshop for the caregiver. And generally, that is the mother. We'll just use that as an example. So giving her all the resources to build up herself so she can look after herself first. Then once we've got that sorted, then giving her resources to help that child that is in need, then resources for helping that sibling, and then the rest of the family, so that we have a whole practice that the whole family can use, and so the whole family can heal instead of just that child.
Fabulous. And that's a real great example of, not being able to pour from an empty cup, or putting your own oxygen mask on first, whatever analogy you use. I think it's so important that we look after ourselves if we're then expected to look after others.
And it took me a long time to learn that lesson.
Oh, fabulous work that you do, Emma Kate, and an amazing inspirational story that you have, and you tell it so well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Check out more about what Emma Kate's up to and her mindfulness coaching on her website, and tune in for the next episode of In Her Words.
Thank you so much, Jess.